If you want to be more budget friendly, you have to become an artist, a bit of a creative thinker, because it's going to take consistently looking at your current circumstances and solving it differently than everyone else. And of course, there's these foundational principles, right? You need to be disciplined, you got to be resourceful. But what does that mean to the person who has always had variety for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and they're finally on their own? In comparison to the person whose variety was always just something on white bread. As we go through the recipes, I'm going to talk through some of the thought processes I have that I believe could apply regardless of your situation. With this first meal, we're using nothing but pantry staples and extremely cheap produce. Also, this meal is a total of 8 servings, which means your price per serving is only 72 cents. That is about 6 times cheaper than 1 gallon of gas today, at least where I live. Did you notice that I made more rice than I needed? We'll get to that. This Tex Mex rice on my website is actually made in an Instapot, just for the easy, dump everything and go type of recipe. But I made it here in pots and pans to help demonstrate that you don't have to skip a recipe because you don't have the recommended hardware. That's part of that current circumstance, solving differently approach. I used basmati brown rice. You can certainly use another type of rice if you found something that's possibly cheaper. In this recipe, I like to swap out the beans, and instead of using black ones, I use pinto beans, or I go with that option of just using 2 different type of beans at the same time, and then I take the corn out of the recipe. I do that as a higher protein option, but also it helps stretch the recipe into more servings because beans are more filling than corn. If you want to make the meal just a bit more interesting, simply add it into a tortilla, add a little salsa on top, and roll it into a burrito. You could also freeze it and take it to work as lunch. You could pop it right in the microwave, and similar to like your store-bought version, you want to make sure the internal temperature reaches 165 degrees Fahrenheit, because everyone brings a food thermometer to work. Duh. I've always wondered why there are so many pizza stores. I mean, outside of the fact that it's bread smothered in sauce, which is like the most delicious invention ever. My thought is it's profit margin. Making pizza is disturbingly cheap, you know? Aside from using budget-friendly ingredients, yet combining that with simply just being resourceful is a recipe for dough in your pockets. All puns intended. This recipe was a no yeast dough. So we're saving some change since we're not actually adding yeast into the recipe, but also we're saving time, which is also money, because we simply don't need to wait for the dough to rise. This pizza dough cost a total of 49 cents, and I had enough to make 2 pizzas. We reused some of the ingredients from the first recipe, such as garlic, onions, also used pantry staples and some leftover items. Like those cherry tomatoes, they were from a salad last week. I don't still have the salad. I just have, you know, a container of like leftover tomatoes. Hopefully that clears that up. Pizza is basically just you using bread as a vessel for leftovers. Try not to overdo it on sauce. You want to keep it on there thin. Otherwise, it's gonna be hard to avoid getting the dough soggy. When adding on leafy greens, I've learned the hard way you should add those on after you pull it out the oven. Otherwise, you're gonna witness your pizza change seasons right from spring all the way to fall. Brown leaves, crispy and all. That rhymed. Like me, try to use canned tomato sauce and just season it to taste rather than buying pizza sauce. Other sauces you can make because possibly tomato sauce just isn't your thing for whatever your reason may be. You can use carrots and blend that up with vegetable stock. That's actually a pretty good sauce and extremely cheap to make. Again, season to taste. You can add Italian seasoning, you know, some fresh garlic, things like that. Some basil, whatever you want. Or the other one I do, extremely cheap and extremely tasty, I actually blend up a can of butter beans. There are endless toppings you can put on a pizza. So crack open your fridge or pantry and get creative. The biggest way to start saving money when it comes to food is learning how to plan ahead. Meal prep is always looked at as making a bunch of food and then portioning things out from there. But it's also just simply planning. I'm making rice, just the thought sparks of what else can I do with this rice? When it comes to shopping, only shop deals. If that means going to several stores to make the most of your money, then make it happen. You also have to limit costly substitutions. Chicken fried rice was a thing for me prior to being vegan. That doesn't mean now I should go looking for a vegan meat substitute to replace it. Canned or bagged beans, fresh produce, or, you know, frozen veggies are a way better all-around options for add-ins. And don't forget, break all of the rules. Vegan butter isn't traditionally used in fried rice, but that's all I had on hand, so I made it work. Technically, you wanna go for like a high heat oil. This recipe cost a total of $2.07, and it's as much as 4 servings of fried rice. That breaks down to 52 cents a serving. If you haven't made fried rice before, you wanna make sure you're using a really large skillet, or a wok would be best. You need as much space as possible to push your ingredients around on and off the heat. Before tossing anything into the pot, you wanna make sure your oil is really hot, basically slightly smoking. Any rice works here, whether it's brown or wild rice or your basic white rice. The key is that it's cold and you want it to be about a day old. That's for best results. The agave, I wouldn't swap with anything that has, like strong flavor. For example, I wouldn't go with maple syrup. Just think of fried rice like any other stir fry. Just toss all types of stuff in there that you think are gonna be good, and you'll most likely come out with a pretty successful dish. All the recipes we discussed today are linked in the description at my website. Also, you can find some more tips there on how to be vegan on a budget. Need more dinner inspiration? You can check out one of the 2 videos you see here. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, believe in good. Peace.